Welcome, everybody, to the Sentinel Report. I am your host, Alex Newman. It's wonderful to have you with us on this beautiful first day of December that the Lord has made. So much going on in the news. The UN is coming after homeschoolers. Donald Trump blowing up relations with South Africa. He says the regime in South Africa is persecuting European descent farmers, infringing on property rights, and much more. Is he crazy? Well, we've got a very special guest on to discuss all that. Also, digital IDs, a key tool for enslaving you. We have the great Senator Joe Nicola of Missouri joining us to discuss that. He's got a great bill to protect us from the worst excesses of the digital tyrants. Stay tuned for all that and more. First, we got a word from the Word. This comes out of Galatians chapter 4, verses 4 through 5. The Bible reads, "But when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law, that we might receive the adoption as sons." And folks, I've preached whole sermons on this concept of adoption. Can you understand, and I know you can't because I can't either, imagine being adopted into the family of the Most High God, the Almighty Creator of the heavens and the earth? It's hard to even begin to contemplate, but that's the reality for those of us who are in him. So be joyful today, be thankful, and we got so much to go through today. So folks, stay with us. We got a wild ride today. Before we do get to our news segment today, I want to just do a roundup of some of our key sponsors. We're so grateful for them. They're the ones who make this all possible, and we vet them thoroughly. So go check them out. Our friends at Genesis Gold are absolutely amazing. Go check out newmanfaithgold.com, newmanfaithgold.com. Our crypto partners, our friends at Block Trust IRA, they do amazing work. I've had my money invested, the little bit that I have in crypto, I've had with them. They've got this wonderful proprietary AI system. Go to cryptowithnewman.com. That's crypto with Newman.com. Our great friends over at Patriot Mobile. Boy, I can't say enough good things about them. I actually have Patriot Mobile on my little cell phone here. And if you go to patriotmobile.com and use the promo code Newman or select Alex Newman under the "Where did you hear about us?" Or even if you just call in and tell them you heard about us from Alex Newman on the Sentinel Report, you're going to get some incredible deals. They've got this amazing promo going on right now for the holidays. So go check it out, patriotmobile.com/Newman, patriotmobile.com/holiday25, and mention us. Also, our friends at Classical Conversation, great program for the education of children. And then our friends at Victory Nutrition International, vni.life/Newman. They're running some amazing sales right now. These are products I use every day now. I just feel like if the day goes by and I haven't had my VNI stuff, I need to go find it. Really great stuff for your gut health, for the minerals and vitamins that you need with this proprietary absorption technology. It's all at vni.life/Newman. Getting into the news, folks. A lot going on. Donald Trump has just announced that he's going to be designating parts of the Muslim Brotherhood as a foreign terrorist organization. He says it will be done in the strongest and most powerful terms. And he did not designate the entire organization as a terrorist organization. Some critics are saying he should have gone further. It comes shortly after Republican Texas Governor Greg Abbott did the same thing. He designated the Muslim Brotherhood and the Council on American Islamic Relations as foreign terrorist organizations. That means they cannot buy property in the state of Texas. So these are big developments, folks. Very significant. Trump has also announced a major crackdown on immigration. He's actually now calling for reverse migration. He's got this really incredible statement. He says, "Happy Thanksgiving to all our great American citizens. You've been so nice in allowing our country to be divided, disrupted, carved up, murdered, beaten, mugged, and laughed at, along with certain other foolish countries throughout the world for being politically correct." So he says we're done with this, folks. He says that these migrants come in and they earn $30,000 a year with a green card, and then they get $50,000 in benefits from the taxpayer for their family. He says the real migrant population is higher than we realize. The refugee burden is, he says, the leading cause of social dysfunction in America, something that didn't exist before. He points out as one example the Somalian gangs in Minnesota that he says are roving the streets looking for prey as our wonderful people stay locked in their apartments. Truly incredible comments. And he says it's now time for these folks to go home. He says he's permanently pausing migration from all third world countries to allow the American immigration system to recover. And there's a whole lot more to it, folks. He says only reverse migration can fully cure this situation. Other than that, happy Thanksgiving to all. So that is from President Donald Trump. Also, kind of proving his point. We got a Muslim congressman from Michigan calling on Hamas supporters to take over the country. Listen.
Political structures that I have to work in, that we all are surrounded by, was built on slavery and genocide and rape and oppression. Real change doesn't come from the cowards and warmongers in Congress. It comes from the streets. It comes from all of us mobilizing and seizing the power to resist and fight back.
Yeah, folks, these are the kinds of people in Congress now because they have been mass importing millions of Muslims from the Middle East and North Africa, and there will only be more, right? Zoran Mamdani, whatever, is the tip of the iceberg if we're not careful here. Now, America's Catholic bishops are pretty upset about all this. Just recently, they delivered what the fake media is calling a historic rebuke of the president. They had a almost unanimous statement at their recent conference of bishops in Baltimore. They voted 216 to 5, with 3 abstaining, for a special message on immigration. And basically, they said Trump is wrong. We oppose the indiscriminate mass deportation of people. We pray for an end to dehumanizing rhetoric and violence, whether directed at immigrants or law enforcement. So a powerful statement. Meanwhile, the Archbishop Vigano, who of course was excommunicated by Pope Francis, he was the papal nuncio to the United States, the highest ranking Catholic official in America. He says Western governments have been infiltrated by criminals to impose an evil agenda on us. Listen to this.
A dangerous subversive elite has managed to infiltrate the highest levels of Western institutions and governments to implement the criminal plan of the Agenda 2030. In many self-proclaimed democratic states, the voices denouncing this global coup are being silenced through censorship, intimidation, psychiatrization, and even arrest. Among the victims of the totalitarian regime quietly establishing itself in Europe, Canada, Australia, and other vassal nations of the United Nations, NATO, World Health Organization, and World Economic Forum, all private entities funded by the same powers, is lawyer Rainer Fulmich, unjustly imprisoned and still awaiting for a fair trial.
Well, the whole message is really powerful, folks. I encourage you to check it out. But when somebody like that is sounding the alarm like this, and he's been doing it for a few years, we ought to be paying attention. Of course, you know I'm not Catholic, but these are really important remarks from an individual who put a lot on the line to share them. Now, Joe Biden's aides conspired to hide his decline, and they basically ruled in his place using the auto pen. The House Oversight Committee has just released this incredible video. We're not going to show you the whole thing, but here's the start of it. Check it out.
Was the number one issue in the campaign the president's fitness or his age?
Did you ever see President Biden in a wheelchair?
I do not recall ever seeing President Biden in a wheelchair.
And new information now on the people in his inner circle and how the cover-up actually operated.
Senior aides that worked here until just a couple months ago, the beginning of this year, manipulating an ailing president for their own gain.
How much were you paid for your role in the campaign in 2024?
Just a little bit short of $4 million.
I'm sorry, how much?
$4 million.
You believe that the president should stay in the race. Your own financial stake in the matter was a factor in any way in your advice to the president.
I don't believe that.
Yeah, it goes on, folks. Some of these shots of the testimony are just astounding, folks. These people abused Joe Biden. They used Joe Biden. They abused the American people. And frankly, I think it's time for some accountability. I don't know how much longer this can continue without somebody being held responsible. But there are really serious problems in the world, as you may know. Michelle Obama has identified a new kind of racism that needs to be battled. Apparently, Black women spend more time fixing their hair than non-Black women. And I mean, it's just terrible. Listen.
Here, as women of color, that the way our hair naturally grows out of our head, it's beautiful. But if we struggle to make it look like the standard, that means we are spending thousands of hours and lots of money straightening out what is naturally curly hair, right? And that takes time out of your life. It costs money.
Yeah, man, so glad Michelle Obama's on the job. Now, folks, I know a lot of wonderful black women. In fact, I've had several who've played very important roles in my life, and I've never heard any of them complain about hair racism. But don't worry, the Democrats in Pennsylvania are all over this, okay? They have just officially worked to ban hair racism across the state. Check it out.
Human Relations Commission. The same would happen for our bill, because now hair discrimination is part of the protected class of race, which is in the PA Human Relations Act. So they could call their statewide Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, and there are also satellite offices all across the state.
All right, so no hair racism in Pennsylvania unless you want some big problems. Andrew Muller sent me this earlier. Andrew, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us, Chief of Operations here at Liberty Sentinel Media Incorporated. Turns out Rockefeller is teaming up with Mr. Beast. Folks, if you don't know Mr. Beast, he is like the most popular YouTube personality among children all over the world. I mean, when we were in Azerbaijan a year ago, Andrew, we had little kids coming up to us saying, Mr. Beast, Mr. Beast. Well, now he's teaming up with Rockefeller Foundation to brainwash the youth. What do you say?
Yeah, this is significant. I mean, Mr. Beast has 453 million subscribers on YouTube. Massive, massive channel. And he said that he spent his life making YouTube videos, but now he wants to spend his life helping people. And who better to help him do that than the Rockefeller Foundation, who he says he wants to download their brains into the brains of his staff so that they can help. I think this is an example, Alex, of culture and the power of culture, particularly among youth, being used by the globalists, the Rockefellers, who we've exposed, particularly you've exposed at length for decades, to achieve that. So you really need to start paying attention, parents, to what your children watch, because it certainly has an impact. And this is just one example we know of. Think of all the ones we don't.
Yeah, and folks, the Rockefellers are bad news. And I've said for a long time, anyone who calls himself Mr. Beast has got to be bad news. That's why my kids aren't allowed to watch it. Now you join forces together. Just vile stuff, folks. If your kids or your grandkids watch Mr. Beast, maybe you ought to reconsider it. Now, we've got a new poll out of the Heartland Institute. They teamed up with Rasmussen Reports. They found that most young Americans likely to vote in the next election want to see a Democratic socialist in the White House. Andrew, you had a speech on the future of MAGA and the youth that went really viral on our YouTube channel, and excuse me, our Rumble channel. Folks, go check it out. It was brilliant. It was his talk at the Phyllis Schlafly's Eagles Summit. But Andrew, what do you make of this? Why are young people so enthusiastic about losing their freedom?
Well, first of all, it's no surprise when you consider we've had multiple generations go through government indoctrination camps that have programmed them to think capitalism bad, socialism good. But if the Republican Party wants to recapture these voters, which I do think is a possibility, they're going to have to focus on three main points, which are America first, putting our national sovereignty and national interests above all others. That would include ending endless wars that do not benefit the American taxpayer, the American citizen in any way, shape, or form. And the third thing would be closing our borders, fixing the housing crisis. These things are interlocked together. The median first sale age for people who buy houses for the first time, it's in their 40s. Just a few years ago, it was in the 30s. A few decades ago, it was in the early 20s. My generation can't afford to buy houses. So we need to be America first. We need to fix the housing crisis. We need to end the foreign wars. And we need to close the borders and fix all this. Because if they don't, if Republicans don't, while they currently have all three branches, they're going to turn to socialism for the answer.
Yeah, that's it. And we're watching it play out, folks. It's terrible. Thank you, Andrew. Folks, over in Massachusetts, I mean, this is the level of lunacy we're seeing now on the radical left. The Massachusetts governor has appointed a man who dresses in women's clothing to the Women's Commission. This is Governor Maura Healey appointing a transgender individual to the Massachusetts Commission on the Status of Women. And, of course, anybody who says anything about it is somehow a terrible human being. But don't worry. Elon Musk's Optimus is going to eliminate poverty, he says. Here are his remarks. Check it out.
You know, people often talk about like eliminating poverty, giving everyone amazing medical care. Well, there's actually only one way to do that, and that's with the Optimus robot. With humanoid robots, you can actually give everyone amazing medical care. Optimus will ultimately be better than the best human surgeon.
Well, I don't know about all that, but I know I am holding on to my 2 shares of Tesla. We'll see what happens, so we'll keep you posted on all that, folks. But the IRS is moving in this direction. They have now reportedly deployed AI agents across multiple divisions after slashing their workforce by an estimated 25% earlier this year. So kind of creepy. AI will be looking at your tax returns. Who knows what AI will be doing with it? And last but not least, folks, the feds are officially looking into Bill Gates of hell. That's according to a letter sent Monday by Senator Chuck Grassley, chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, looking at why the Gates Foundation may have been sending millions of dollars through overseas programs to benefit hostile foreign powers, in violation of American nonprofit law. That very much includes entities associated with the mass murdering CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. And we're very grateful for the chairman of the House Select Committee on Chinese Communist Party, Representative John Molinar, saying that it's time to designate Alibaba and other Chinese companies as companies that are aiding and abetting, he says, our mortal enemy, the CCP and the People's Liberation Army. He said all that on Frank Gaffney's program on Real America's Voice. You ought to check it out. All right, folks, that's all we have time for now. Stay with us. We're going to be right back with Senator Joe Nicola, who's got an incredible bill to shut down digital ID tyranny in his state. We'll be right back.
Life's just better with VNI. There's purpose, there's passion, and there's a renewed sense of inspiration and optimism with every day. After all, we were founded on the power of possibility. Nearly a decade ago, a team of world-class scientists, formulators, and industry makers brought together biology, chemistry, and technology and created something unique and life-changing, while infusing a new sense of health and hope into the world. With every product comes an empowering opportunity to take charge of our destiny. One where we feel rejuvenated and energized, and everything else around us feels lighter, brighter, and full of promise. Let's live victoriously, together.
Welcome back to the Sentinel Report. Thanks for being with us, folks. Real ID and digital ID is a subject that's near and dear to my heart. I keep telling people digital ID is not in and of itself the problem, but it's like an on-road to a superhighway to hell that has no exits and no U-turns, right? Once you get on, they're going to be able to control everything. They're going to be able to monitor everything. It's a huge deal, and people are just not getting it. So just a couple weeks ago, I was very honored and blessed to give a talk at the Pro-Family Legislative Exchange Council's conference. A lot of great speakers there, Glenn Beck and David Barton and Seth Gruber and a lot of great patriots. And they asked me to speak about digital ID. There are hundreds of lawmakers from across the country there, hundreds of lawmakers there, and almost all of them, all the ones that I talked to, were extremely concerned about this, trying to figure out ways to protect the people of their states from this looming disaster. I don't know what else to call it. And by some sort of divine providence, coincidence, whatever you want to call it, I got a call that same day from Senator Joe Nicola, who joins us today. He's a senator from Missouri, asking about digital ID. He wasn't at the conference, but he had this on his mind, and he has just introduced an incredible bill on this very issue to try to protect people from the very real dangers. Senator, welcome to the program. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Alex. It's just a pleasure and honor to be with you.
It's an honor and a pleasure to have you. And you are, in addition to being a lawmaker, you're a pastor, you've written books, you've been a small business owner, you served in the Navy. You've got an incredible background. You're a great patriot, a great man of God. So let's just start with the obvious question before we get into the nitty-gritty of the bill.
Sure.
Why do we need a bill to protect us from this digital ID scheme?
Well, I think you, in your monologue there, just really nailed it. We're on a slippery slope here. Once we get, in my opinion, once we get a digital ID that's government issued, and we already have a federal one with the Real ID, and then we get a digital currency that all this is going to be connected together. And I've even been telling my congregation, once we have a digital ID, and all these pieces come together and are connected to that digital ID, our freedom and liberty is over. It's done if this is mandatory. And that's actually one of the reasons why I ran for state senate is I think the federal government's out of control and they're doing so many things that are very scary. And the only thing we can really do, in my opinion, is shore up our and protect our freedoms and liberties here in our state.
Amen. And really, that is a very good place to do it. Like you said, states were supposed to be the critical components of government. The federal government was not supposed to be micromanaging our lives. You know, the states and the people, of course, retained all the powers that we didn't delegate to the federal government. And you actually talk about the Constitution, the Fourth Amendment. We have a right to be secure in our persons, houses, papers, and effects. You talk about the Ninth Amendment, protecting the rights that weren't enumerated there. But your bill does a lot of really important things. One of the key things, and I think this is huge, I hope other states will replicate this in their own states, is to prohibit a compulsory, mandatory digital ID by any government agency or even other entities unless a person chooses to opt in. I think that's fantastic. People should have the ability to go through life without having to constantly flash their little smartphone in their digital ID to be able to do the basic things that we have to do. And you say here also that non-digital form of paper ID or regular ID should always be an option for legal citizens. Talk to us about that provision. Why did you think that was important?
Well, one of them is our elderly population. You know, some of them still don't have smartphones, and people that are becoming more and more aware of what's actually going on and how dangerous smartphones are and how they're taking our data are getting rid of them and going back to older style phones. And so, again, once we have this digital ID that's government issue, and everything, our medical records, digital currency, and really just everything gets attached to it, then we'll be able to be traced, tracked, followed, monitored, the whole bit. And so I'm more for freedom, and freedom is choice. So if we have the choice, if people want a digital ID, great, sign up for one, get one. But know what you're signing up for. Know what you're getting. I think a lot of people, including myself, I didn't know when I first got a smartphone that they're going to be listening to us. They're going to be selling our data, and it's probably all in those small little print, right? When you just hit click and keep going and accept. And that's another thing my bill will do is make this a little larger, that people actually have to check a box to check to opt into it instead of just automatically being opted into it. So I think that's very, very important, and still be able to have some form of ID, whether it be paper or some card or something like that, like we do now, in place of something that's just purely digital.
Yeah, I really love those provisions that you have to opt into this stuff. They can't just vacuum up all your data and stick it in a database and share it with whoever they want. I think this is hugely significant. It says individuals need to opt in before they can be monitored, tracked, surveilled for any reason other than a crime that they may have committed. You can't be required to have a digital ID to participate in everyday activities, internet browsing, which is huge. Eventually, they're going to try to say, you can't get on the internet, you can't make comments, you can't use your social media unless we know exactly who you are and you've logged in with your digital ID. So you can opt out of all this. Parents and legal guardians have the ability to opt their children out of all this data collection. The license plate readers can't be tied into the digital ID unless a person explicitly agrees. And there are actually measures here to enforce this. I mean, we're talking big fines for agencies or entities that violate this. Talk about that, because a lot of these bills, they're just nice resolutions. They sound great, but they don't actually have any teeth in them. Yours tries to really put some enforcement in there.
Yeah, so, and that's something I found out. I'm still in my first year in the state Senate. I've never been elected to office before. And I sure learned a lot my first session. Our session runs from January to mid-May. And I've seen bills like that where they do sound good, like you say, but there is no teeth. There's no provision in there for violation. So I think that's very important because people, that's really in our whole society, right? I think part of our whole crime in our society is there's very little punishment and fear of punishment. And so to put that in there, so what I have is per occurrence, there's a limit of $150,000 fine. That if I take identity extremely, extremely personal, and I think it's very, very important. I mean, it's ours. It's something we own personally. God created us with a unique DNA, unique fingerprints. There's nobody else on the planet that's ever been created or ever will be that's exactly like us individually. And so that identity is very, very important, and it belongs to us. It doesn't belong to the government, but we still need to have a way to identify ourselves for certain things, driver's license and flying and what have you, even credit cards and all kinds of ways to identify. But the identity still belongs to us. And so if it's going to be violated, if somebody's just going to take my identity and start selling it to other for marketing purposes and advertisement purposes and for whatever else, and actually making money on it, then I have to agree. I should be able to agree to allow them to do that. And if they don't, they need a penalty.
Yeah.
That's because it's mine. It belongs to me. Your identity belongs to you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Senator. I'm really grateful for your work on this. You just introduced the bill today, so we don't even have a bill number yet, but we will keep you updated on this, folks. We do hope that you will share this with your own legislators in whatever state you live in. And Senator Joe Nicola, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for doing this. It's an honor and a privilege and a pleasure, and I hope we can talk to you again soon.
Oh, I look forward to it. Thank you, Alex, and thanks for your help, too. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. God bless you.
All
We'll
right.
talk to you soon.
God bless you. Okay.
All righty, folks, stay with us. We're going to be right back. The UN has just put out this crazy new report saying that homeschoolers need to do what the UN thinks they ought to do. I wish I was kidding, but I'm not. So we have Robert Bortins joining us, CEO of the largest homeschooling network in the world, over 135,000 students, Classical Conversations. Stay with us. We'll be right back with much more on this massive threat to our parental rights.
In 1776, a nation was born. Forged in the crucible of revolution, brave men and women stood together fighting for freedom, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. Introducing Patriot Mobile, the wireless carrier that stands with you. We are committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile. For free activation, use promo code Newman.
Welcome back to the Sentinel Report. Alex Newman, your host here. Folks, a few weeks ago, we told you about the most brazen attack from the United Nations that I've ever seen on homeschooling, parental rights, Christian education, really any kind of non-government education. It was truly breathtaking, prepared under the supervision of a North Korean communist. Yes, it's true. It sounds like parody, but it's actually true. You can go read the report yourself. I did a big article on that in the Epic Times. That's gone kind of viral now, so we're starting to see some pushback. But I couldn't think of anybody better to discuss this with us today than my friend Robert Bortins. He is the CEO of Classical Conversations. It is the world's largest homeschooling network. They've got over 130,000 students. I'm very blessed to be a senior fellow there. Of course, I have my own children enrolled there. And Robert and I have a book coming out that's directly relevant to. We wrote the book before the UN report. It's called Woke and Weaponized. We'll talk about that in a moment. But Robert, good to see you. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Alex, thanks for having me. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving.
It was wonderful, a great blessing. I hope the same is true for you. Robert, what do you make of this UN report? I mean, let's start with the why. Why do you think the UN feels the need to put a big target on all of our backs?
Yeah, I mean, the United Nations are all about this global citizenship education. They want to mold the minds of our young people in a way to support their globalist worldviews. And if you've read any of the UN education reports, unfortunately, this latest report is just another one in which they are showing us their hand, what they're planning to do with homeschooling and independent education, and why it is such a detriment to their view of us being good global citizens, where we all are, counting our carb credits and making sure that we call everyone by the right pronouns, and most importantly, giving them all of our tax money so that they can provide for us from cradle to grave.
Yeah, it's really amazing to see them come out this openly, because I've been warning that they were going to do this. And I was almost secretly hoping that I'd be wrong and, the UN would just leave us alone. But no, if you read this report, folks, they are so clear. You got to have education content controlled and regulated by government and ultimately by the UN. The values taught need to be determined by the UN and in accordance with the UN. They even talk about the fact that moms usually handle the bulk of the homeschooling. That reinforces negative gender stereotypes and contributes to the perpetuation of unpaid care work. It is so abominable. But Robert, at Classical Conversations, I mean, the children getting an education through CC are, I mean, orders of magnitude better off than the kids in the government schools. And we see it on the tests. We see it in the way they speak. We see it in their futures as adults when they get good jobs and they start businesses and they do great things for their families and for humanity. And it's really interesting because in this UN report, they just kind of brush all that off by saying like, well, there's methodological flaws in the research. So we don't really know that homeschoolers do that great. What's been your experience? I mean, you guys have graduated a million plus people through your program. If the UN is right, we should expect terrible things. What are we actually seeing?
Yeah, no, I mean, what we hear from college professors, and these are at, leftist universities and at Christian universities, that they want our kids, that our students are excelling, that they ask great questions, that they are a fabric of their institutions, and they're actually like actively recruiting them to go. And we actually have businesses that reach out to me on a weekly basis. How do we get some Classical Conversations graduates to skip college and just come work for me? We'll train them, we'll pay them well, we'll make sure that they have the tools they need to be successful in life. So whether it's secular employers, secular universities, or Christian employers, they're all saying the same thing, that they want more Classical Conversations graduates at their business, at their institutions. And it's because of the great work that these homeschooling moms are doing. A mother's love is infinitely more wise than a PhD from some university that has no kids, no desire for kids, and wants to teach your kids their own ideology and perpetrate that instead of your family values.
Amen. Yeah, I always tell people the government can never love your children the way you do. Ever. It's impossible, literally. Robert, you and I have a new book coming out. I'm really excited about it. I've already been promoting it and selling pre-orders. People can get that at our website. It'll be available on Amazon soon. It's called Woke and Weaponized: How Karl Marx Won the Battle for American Education and How We Can Take It Back. There's a lot of really, really important information out there. You did a lot of the chapters. I did some. Give us a sneak preview into what people are going to find in this book that really has not been talked about in other places and that they need to know.
Yeah, so the research done was phenomenal. Backing it up, I don't know how many sources we have, hundreds of sources. So this is a well-researched book. Robert Owen, who predated Horace Mann, who most people have heard about, actually was one of the godfathers of the public institution of school. And his idea was that we needed to rid ourselves of the three evils of society, which of course are family, religion, and private property. And he saw that the only way of doing that was by creating a public school system. Now today, we pay about 40%, maybe 50% of your earnings into taxes, especially if you're in a Democrat state. Over half of Democrats believe socialism is a good thing. We are seeing, people be depressed. We see that the number of children being had in the United States is less than replacement rate. And we see that religiously, of course, we might be rebounding, but something like Bortins says 6% of Americans have a biblical worldview. And so from Robert Owen to Marx to today, we can see that this ideology of government controlling, paying for, and dictating curriculum of education has not improved results. It's a waste of taxpayers' money, and we need to take our education for our children back into our own hands if we want to save this country.
Amen. And one of the areas that I thought was most groundbreaking, and I actually learned a lot while we were researching this, Robert. I kind of had a vague idea of what we would find, but actually going and looking and finding it was really extraordinary. We looked at who's funding the so-called school choice movement. And this is going to come to as a shock to a lot of people because they just assume that, they were conservative and libertarian. And we found The usual suspects, the billionaire left-wingers, the Bill Gates, the Bloombergs, the Soroses, the Walton family, all the usual suspects. That led me to some pretty interesting conclusions. This is one of the chapters that you and I collaborated on closely, and I really hope people will get this information. Robert, what are your thoughts on this? Why is it that we're finding all of this huge money from people who we know don't share our values? And Mark Zuckerberg, the little guy that runs Facebook, why are they pouring so much money into so-called choice and charter schools and innovation and these kinds of things?
Yeah, it's just to control the next generation's worldview, and that's what we've seen in this United Nations hit piece on homeschooling. That they think that having boys be boys and girls be girls, and that climate change, may or may not be man-made. Let's have that conversation. Is an existential threat to their worldview and where they want to see our country going. And so, if they can control the schools directly instead of through school boards and the local individuals, that they can then dictate what the curriculum says and to manipulate them. We're going to see this in AI. These AI schools that are popping up that of course are owned by these people, so they're going to be making billions of dollars off of these school choice bills. They're going to be buying up your small independent private school. You won't even know it. It's going to be a Zuckerberg school or a Gates school or a Walton school or a George Soros school soon enough. And so this is their way. About 13% of Americans had escaped the public school system, and that was growing rapidly, that they needed to pull them back in. And the best way to dictate curriculum is to be the ones paying for it. And how do you pay for a curriculum in a private school? Well, you give them vouchers, you give them tax credits, you give them all of these different mechanisms and say cool things like it's parental choice and the money follows the kid. But it's really Mark Zuckerberg and his cronies that are following these children in these programs. And that's their ultimate goal. And they don't care if it's Republicans or Democrats that are passing it, as long as they get to dictate the curriculum and then get paid for it.
Yeah. Tax dollars and profits for them, and dumbed down indoctrination masquerading as education for your children. Terrible deal. I mean, it's hard to think of a worse deal than that. But folks, to be fair, the UN did tell us the plan. 2022 Global Education Monitoring Report. They said, hey, how are we going to get control of all these non-state education providers? I know, we'll give them government money. Robert, this book is going to be, I think, really, really significant. It's going to be available early January. I know it can be pre-ordered at our website, libertysentinel.org. If you go to our shop, our store, when will it be up on Amazon for people to pre-order?
Yeah, we're planning a launch of January 2nd, as long as everything gets done in time, and hopefully shipping by January 15th. And so our goal is to get it into your hands so you can educate yourself, because the government's not going to educate you on this, and it's important that we create a grassroots movement to protect our kids from this UN indoctrination that's going on, not just through public schools anymore, but soon through our private institutions.
Yeah, it's hard to think of anything more important than that. I mean, if they capture the hearts and minds of our children, what's the point? And we're going to lose everything. Robert, it's been, as always, a tremendous blessing. Thank you for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to this book making a big impact. Classical Conversations, folks, go check it out. classicalconversations.com/LSM. If you've got children, grandchildren, you guys need to know about Classical Conversations. It is an incredible blessing to my children, to our family. And Robert, thank you again for joining us. We'll talk to you again soon, I'm sure.
Thank you, Alex.
God bless you. All right, folks, again, if you want to get that book, libertysentinel.org, libertysentinel.org, go to our shop, go to our store. You can pre-order it today. It will ship in January, so you'll get it soon enough. We've already sold a whole bunch on the pre-order. It's selling like hotcakes. We hope you'll get a copy too. Very, very significant book. Stay with us. We're going to be right back with one of the leading South African analysts. His name is Ernst van Zyl, talking about Donald Trump's policies towards South Africa, which have been making headlines around the world. The fake media says Trump is a crazy, fascist, racist lunatic who's making stuff up. Is he? Stay tuned and find out.
Your children are your legacy. Treat them as such. When you homeschool with Classical Conversations, they connect you with a local community of like-minded families who not only learn together, but do life together. They equip homeschool parents just like you, or grandparents, with the confidence to raise bright, observant students who have a lifelong love of learning. please visit classicalconversations.com/LSM to learn more.
Welcome back to the Sentinel Report. Alex Newman, your host here. Folks, thanks for staying with us. Now, this is an issue that's been near and dear to my heart for a very long time. I used to live in South Africa. I have very fond memories of the country and the peoples. It's a beautiful, beautiful place with wonderful, lovely people. But they've got a lot of problems going on. And nobody wanted to talk about them until Donald Trump showed up on the scene and suddenly just dropped the nuclear bomb on the world by giving some little bit of insight into what is going on down there, or at least his take on it. I've been reporting on this since at least 2012, and to me, it's very alarming. I think it's a very serious issue, and you might not have noticed from the American media, but huge diplomatic row, if you will. Donald Trump refused to send any high-level official to the G20 meeting in Johannesburg, South Africa, just recently. And now, adding insult to injury, he has refused to allow the South African delegation to come to the next one that'll be in G20, the next G20 hosted here in my hometown of Miami. Joining us now to discuss all this and more is Ernst van Zyl. He is an Afrikaner, of course, one of members of the people group that Donald Trump has said are being persecuted. So we'll try to get some insights from him. He's also the head of public relations at AfriForum. It's a South African civil rights group, a community-based solutions organization that has a special focus on the Afrikaner people group. My friend Dr. Harry Booyens calls them the Second America, Amabulu. He says they're basically the closest cousins to Americans of any people on the face of the planet. And there's a whole lot of historical reasons for that. Ernst, welcome to the program. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Good evening, Alex. I'm very glad to be here, and thank you for the platform.
Absolutely. It's great to have you. And I definitely want to get into Donald Trump. In fact, you've got a documentary that was shared by Elon Musk, Is Trump Right About South Africa? So we've got to get into that. You, of course, have a master's degree in political science from the University of Stellenbosch. So let's just start with that question. Trump refused to send anybody senior to this G20 meeting in South Africa. And again, he rebuked the South African government for what he says are gross human rights abuses against the Afrikaner people. You've studied this in some depth. You're right there in the thick of it. You're in Europe right now, I should point out. You're not at home. But is Donald Trump right about South Africa?
Right. So I'm currently, you're absolutely correct. I'm currently here in Europe during international liaison tour, specifically to get the word out about what's happening in South Africa. The solidarity movement that I work for, specifically AfriForum, has been doing a lot of these international information tours, and we're currently doing another one here. But that's a very interesting question. Is Trump right about South Africa? It seems to be the nuclear hot question that nobody really wants to tackle. Everyone would rather talk about, is Trump racist? Is Trump a fascist? Is Trump a hateful human being? Everyone wants to tackle those questions. Nobody really wants to tackle the question, well, is he actually right about South Africa? Well, let's look at the key issues that Trump has highlighted. Number one, is private property rights currently threatened in South Africa? The answer there is a resounding yes, with, I think, one of the catalyst events to this whole diplomatic crisis being the signing of what we call the expropriation bill, which is an act that enables the South African government to expropriate any property it wants without compensation. That is Zimbabwe-style confiscation of any property that it thinks it can confiscate in the name of, quote, the public good, which I think is a very dangerous concept in the hands of a politician. Well, that's the first question. Is Trump right when it comes to the threats to private property rights in South Africa? Absolutely, with the signing of the Expropriation Act. Not a coincidence that that act was signed just a week, or it was signed in December. Only then in January, early February, it was announced that it was signed. A lot of sneaky shenanigans going on there. But then a week after it was announced that this act had been signed, this whole diplomatic crisis erupted with Trump's Truth Social post. So, I mean, that's not a coincidence at all. Seeing as private property rights play a very strong role in the trade agreement, AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunities Act, which gives preferable trade categorization to African countries if they protect private property rights. So that's not a coincidence at all. The second question is, are minorities in South Africa being discriminated against? Well, there, once again, the answer is yes, when it comes to the fact that there's over 140 documented race-based laws in South Africa. I mean, this is not a conspiracy theory. You don't have to go into a rabbit hole, go dig in the archives to find examples of these laws. They've all been very well documented. I think the most recently it was done by the South African Institute of Race Relations. They set up an index called the Race Law Index that lists all these race-based laws. So the question, are minorities like the Afrikaners in South Africa being discriminated against? Well, absolutely, the answer is yes. And then thirdly, the last issue that Donald Trump highlighted in 2025 was incitement of violence against groups like the Afrikaners and the white minority in South Africa. Well, is that happening? Well, the answer once again is yes. When it comes to the videos that Donald Trump masterfully actually so what he did in May, when the president of South Africa visited the White House, is he pretty much effectively locked them in a room and exposed them to what's happening in their own country. The South African delegation was completely just caught off guard in that sense, where as the saying goes, dim the lights has become quite a meme in South Africa, where the South African delegation is sitting there in the White House, and then Donald Trump is like, well, I want to show you something. I want to show you what's happening in your own country, and I want to see your reaction. And he just played them an entire cinematic experience of videos and clips showing them what type of incitement of violence against groups like the Afrikaners are happening in South Africa, most prominently through the chant, kill the Boer, kill the farmer, being done in a stadium filled with 100,000 people. Now, I'd like to ask your audience to imagine a football stadium in the United States filled to the brim with people all chanting about killing minorities or anyone in your country based on their identity. I mean, that's what's happening in South Africa. So on all those counts, threat to private property rights, incitement of violence against minorities, laws that explicitly discriminate against the white minority, on every one of those issues that Trump has raised, the answer is yes, this is real.
Fascinating, and that's been my findings as well. The more I look into this, the more it seems like where there's smoke, there is fire. And who can deny the videos of the things that you're describing? We've been highlighting those for a long time, and I'm glad that the world is finally getting a chance to see those. Ernst, switching gears a little bit, what do you make of the Trump administration's policy response? I've spoken with a lot of Afrikaners who say we're never leaving this place. My great grandpa set up this farm, and there is nothing that you can do to get me off this piece of land except in a body bag. So, some obviously don't want to come here as refugees. We can certainly understand that. But what do you think of the Trump administration's general tactics when it comes to trying to isolate the South African government, offering this olive branch to the Afrikaner people, and some of the diplomatic measures that have happened?
So two things can be true at the same time, Alex, when it comes to the multifaceted approach that the Trump administration has taken. On the one side, the pressure that the Trump administration is pushing onto the South African government is very welcome in regards to the South African government is playing dumb in regards to that. When in the media they're saying we don't know what the Trump administration wants. It's a complete enigma. We can't decipher what this madman wants. It's actually quite clear. He's given a very clear list of things. Number one is condemn the chant, kill the Boer, kill the farmer, a chant that calls for the murdering of your citizens based on their identity. Secondly, don't confiscate your citizens' property based on their white skin. Don't threaten them with the destruction of private property rights in your country. Thirdly, stop racially discriminating policies against especially American companies within your country, like, for example, Starlink. Maybe your audience, some in your audience might not be aware, but why do you think South Africa is one of the few African countries left that does not have access to Starlink currently in South Africa? Well, as Elon Musk has pointed out, it's because Starlink, or more specifically SpaceX, is not sufficiently black-owned, according to the South African government's own strict race-based policies. So even Zimbabwe and Lesotho have Starlink currently, but South Africa does not, because Elon Musk's company does not meet the South African government's race-mad policies. And then lastly, what the Trump administration wants from the South African government is, well, firstly, condemn the chant, kill the Boer, kill the farmer. Don't threaten your citizens with confiscation of their property. Stop the racially discriminatory policies. And then thirdly, don't take explicitly anti-American stances in every opportunity that you get to antagonize the American government and the American people. Because, I mean, just a few weeks ago, CNN published a documentary where the Minister of International Relations, Ronald Lamola, calls Donald Trump a white supremacist in the CNN interview. And then the South African government acts baffled why the Trump administration is not their best friend. I mean, this is, for anyone with eyes to see and ears to hear, it's very clear why this diplomatic crisis has gotten to the devastating place where it has gotten, except the South African government doesn't seem to, or they act to not know why it has gotten to this place. So to sum it up, what the Trump administration is very clearly telling the South African government is that here are the things that you can do to normalize the relationship between our two countries. If you can't do these very basic things as basic as condemn chants that encourage the murder of farmers in your country, then there's nothing for us to talk about. And unfortunately, the South African government up until this point has followed what I call an ostrich strategy of just pushing their head into the sand and pretending like none of this is happening, openly denying that any of these things that the Trump administration is pointing out are even in any sense a reality in their country, even though everyone can see that these are real issues that need to be addressed.
Yeah, absolutely. Ernst, we're almost out of time in this segment, but I've talked to a lot of Afrikaners, and I've seen it myself, who argue that some of what happened in South Africa, some of the tactics that the communists and the subversives and the revolutionaries have used in South Africa, very effectively, by the way, are being deployed now against the United States of America. And we see, of course, Barack Obama, huge fan of not just the ANC, but also the South African Communist Party. And he's spoken fairly openly about this for a period of decades. And I've had people from South Africa say, Alex, watch, next thing's going to happen. They're going to start pulling down your statues. How do I know? Because that's what they're doing right now in Cape Town. That's what they're doing at our universities in South Africa. Do you think there are any lessons for Americans who see this kind of revolutionary fervor growing stronger in our country from the experience that has happened in South Africa?
So in regards to your question, what can Americans learn from what's happening in South Africa, this revolutionary tendencies that seem to be exported to your own country? I'm glad that you mentioned the example of statues being torn down, because that is actually something that's provably started in South Africa in 2015 with the tearing down of the Cecil John Rhodes statue during the Rhodes Must Fall movement. It was then exported to England, and from there it was exported to the United States. So I've got a saying where when it comes to, I mean, the old saying goes, Afghanistan is the graveyard of empires, while South Africa then qualifies as for the title of being the laboratory of empires, where a lot of ideologies of, especially left-wing ideologies, are experimenting with a different type, all different types of policies and seeing what effects it has, and then it's being exported to the rest of the world. But I've got some good news there. So good news and bad news. The bad news is many Western countries I see continuously going down this path of what we call South Africanization, continuously implementing policies that are very resemblant of what's happening in South Africa. So unfortunately, many Western countries will continue to South Africanize. But the good news is this is not a fate set in stone. You can actually change your fate even if you are seeing signs of South Africanization. And the good news there is there is already the antidote to South Africanization is already being pioneered in South Africa by organizations like AfriForum, the Solidarity Movement, and Afrikaners. And you in other Western countries can actually learn not just from the mistakes that we are making, but from our successes as well, where you can see what works, what doesn't work. And if your countries are going down the paths that many Western countries seem to be going down, a path of increased chaos, increased anarcho-tyranny, an increase in racially discriminatory policies against specifically white Americans or white Europeans, well, you're going to see how do you react to that type of context or that type of political persecution. And luckily for you, that experiment is already playing out in South Africa, and you can learn from the Afrikaners to some extent. So I'm very glad to not end on just bad news, but on some good.
Yeah, that's encouraging, Ernst. And, I have long admired AfriForum. You guys have some really profound insights into what is happening in South Africa. And I think a lot of these are actually directly applicable to Americans who value Christian civilization, value individual liberty, value the system of government that our forefathers, in many cases, fought and died for over the centuries. So I want to thank you for joining us. Folks, I encourage you to check out AfriForum and stay with us. We're going to be right back after this quick break.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the next generation of energy drinks, Rev 7. It has no sugar and no caffeine. Instead, Rev 7 uses Go BHB. Go BHB is one of the body's primary ketones, and it provides the most efficient and clean fuel that your body needs. It also helps you stay energized all day with no crashes. Not only that, it produces 3 times more brain energy than sugar, which helps boost your memory, focus, and mental sharpness. It also helps reduce stress and helps balance your mood. Rev 7 does all that while being the best tasting energy drink ever. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% today. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7. For a limited time, you get our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. I drink Rev 7 every day, and I absolutely love it, and so will you.
Welcome back to the Sentinel Report. Alex Newman, your host here. Folks, a lot's going on in Maha world. The big pharmaceutical industry is in a panic. The truth about vaccines is coming out very quickly. In fact, some of it's even on the CDC website. You might have seen our segment last week with Dr. Andy Wakefield, the first guy to blow the whistle on the connection between autism and vaccines. Looks like he has been vindicated. But folks, this is just a start. What we're watching in D.C. is truly extraordinary. Joining us to discuss is John Richardson. He's a personal friend, expert on all things health. He's also the founder of Operation World Without Cancer. He's the founder of the Richardson Nutrition Center, and he's been in the fight for a long time. He's got 11 kids. Great man. John, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us. What is going on with Maha in Washington, D.C.?
Well, it's amazing. We have this weekly meeting called the Maha Media Action Pact every Wednesday, and the information that's coming out directly from the source rather than being filtered through the legacy of the dying media. We still listen to them. I don't know why, but every Wednesday it's fantastic to get straight from the horse's mouth that the studies that are coming out, they always want to keep us infighting. And the truth is, Alex, so much great stuff is happening on our field, but there is so much of it to fix in the health industry, whether it's talking about the poisons in our food, the chemicals that we shouldn't have in our food, the fact that we don't eat the proper foods, and food pyramids. But the one major thing that is just a tidal wave of information is about how these vaccines have been proven to not be creating anything to do with health in our system. It's actually the opposite, and especially the COVID vaccine, because the study in South Korea with 8.5 million people has now been being disseminated, even across, like I said, the dying legacy media. But the other studies in Italy of the 300,000 people that showed that these people had the effects after they're vaccinated. Even people that had not even ever gotten the COVID vaccine, they're comparing people that never got the COVID vaccine to people that got COVID and people that got the vaccine. And clearly through these studies, getting COVID was not nearly as detrimental to your health as getting the vaccine. So the vaccine, although they said it was safe and effective, has been proven through these studies to be unsafe and ineffective. And I can't imagine anybody still being of right mind that's still getting these vaccines out there. And this information is coming and it's flooding out to the marketplace. And we're seeing how that has also increased cancer rates because of the destruction of the immune system. So we're very heartened at Operation World Without Cancer that people are really ready for the message that cancer is a metabolic deficiency disease. And we're preparing to answer that call every day.
Fascinating. And during the break, John, you and I were talking a little bit about, you said there's these new studies showing very interesting things when it comes to cancer related to vitamin B17. I know that's one of your big passions in life. Your dad was a pioneer there, along with other great medical doctors like Congressman Larry McDonald. Obviously, G. Edward Griffin wrote a whole book on it, our mutual friend. Tell us about these new studies.
Well, my good friend, Dr. Margaret Aranda, who I'm not sure you're familiar with, she's a big pioneer. She left her medical position because they wanted to get her vaccinated. She did a deep dive into all of the available data that's about the cyanide scare. You know, they always talk about, I'm sure, Alex, you get it. Oh, I know amygdalin or apricot seeds may be good, but what about the cyanide? So she did a deep dive into all of the cases through her medical research of supposed poisoning. And out of the 38 mentioned studies for cyanide poisoning, she found absolutely zero. I'm saying zero cases of someone dying from eating too much amygdalin. As a matter of fact, 20 of the cases that were reported in medical journals were of animals that they had tested. And so she pushed those aside. And then out of the entire list, she found some kids in northern Pakistan that we talked about in the last time I was on, about how the Hunzas lived to be so long. She found children, 5 to 8 children, they didn't even have a specific number, but 5 to 8 children that were reported to have poisoning from eating wild apricot seeds. And in her complete study, what she found, Alex, is that there was no deaths in anybody in the United States, and there hasn't been even a reported death worldwide in 60 years. And so that's Dr. Margaret Aranda. She's really well known on Substack. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she injected people to keep them from having pain. I don't know why I have a mental block, but she is an amazing doctor, a truth teller. And so that's one of the things that came out. And then we also have a recent patient that reached out to me from my dad's book called Laetrile Case Histories, that said that she was a 12-year-old girl sent home to die of leukemia from Sloan Kettering, and she's still alive today at 64. She'll be 64 this month in December, and she was treated by my father back in 1975, and she's still alive today, 50 years later. So not only have we debunked this lie about cyanide poisoning, but we're continuing to get these case histories from people that have used Laetrile and metabolic therapy to elongate their life well past the 5 years that modern medicine says is a survival rate. And we know that's not a good survival rate.
Wow, amazing. Where can people learn more, John?
Well, they can go to owc.org, which is operationworldwithoutcancer.org. They can get a free copy of Ed Griffin's amazing book, but they can also sign up for all the information, the studies that we're coming out with. And we're coming out with new things every week. And if they want to get the product, they can go to RNC store, rncstore.com, and use the discount code, I believe, if it's the discount code that you can show on the bottom of the screen to get a 10% discount. And there's also still some Black Friday sales going on. So if they just want the product, the apricot seeds, the B17, they can get it at rncstore.com. If they want to get a lot of the updated information about all that's going on, they can go to owwc.org, which stands for Operation World Without Cancer.
Excellent. Hey, John Richardson, thank you very much for joining us on the program. Appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. God bless, Alex.
God bless you too. Thank you. All right, that's all we have time for today, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. Get over to our website, libertysentinel.org, libertysentinel.org. Sign up for the free newsletter, and stay tuned. We'll be back next week with more. Thanks for watching. God bless you all.